A couple of weeks ago, I came across this article from David Perell titled The 50 Ideas That Changed My Life. And right at the top, the number one thing he listed was this idea of inversion, where he says, avoiding stupidity is easier than trying to be brilliant. Instead of asking, how can I help my company, you should ask, what's hurting my company the most and how can I avoid it? Identify obvious failure points and steer clear of them. And I really like this idea because it's very similar to the 80-20 rule that you've probably heard of, but instead of focusing on the 20% of things we should do, it sort of says, okay, what's the 20% of things that we should avoid? In this video, I want to share 5 habits that I think are hurting your finances and should be avoided. And if I miss anything, I would love for you to leave a comment down below with what habits you think can hurt your finances. All right, the first financial habit we want to avoid is unhealthy comparisons. And this is your typical keeping up with the Joneses, looking at your friends, family, and coworkers on Instagram and seeing how they're living their life and comparing your life to theirs in an unhealthy way. And that can absolutely hurt your finances. So how do we avoid this habit? Well, first, it's recognizing that you and the people you're comparing yourself to are drastically different. You have different strengths and weaknesses and talents and abilities, and you started at different places, you have different sets of resources, and most importantly, you have different desires, wants, and goals. You may not even want what they have if you really sit down to stop and think about it. So why are you comparing yourself? It's also important to recognize that most of the time, we're comparing our sort of lowest moments to everybody else's peak moment. If you look at Instagram, their real life doesn't look like that. And so we want to be really careful not to compare sort of our worst moments to someone else's best. Now, the second thing when it comes to this habit is recognizing that just totally not comparing yourself is probably not practical. On his podcast, Jordan Harbinger has a whole episode dedicated to unhealthy comparisons and healthy comparisons. And he talks about how, just not comparing yourself at all is really not great advice, and it's nearly impossible to do. So rather than just not comparing yourself to other people, let's try to turn these unhealthy comparisons into a healthy comparison. A healthy comparison is when you compare yourself to somebody else, but use what they have or what they have going on in their life as inspiration or as like a compass to give some light on what you actually do want to pursue and to kind of explain to yourself, that's interesting. The fact that I'm kind of thinking about them or maybe even jealous of them, maybe that sheds some light on what it is that I'm truly going after. Using that in a healthy way to inspire you to take action is great. We want to avoid using it in an unhealthy way that causes us to spend money that we otherwise really don't want to spend. All right, the second habit that we want to avoid is impulse spending. Whether it's in the checkout line at TJ Maxx, where they literally make you walk through this sort of aisle thing that just pulls on your impulse heartstrings right there at the last moment, or it's that one-click shopping on Amazon that is just so tempting. This happens all the time, and the way it hurts your money is not that it causes you to spend money, it's that it causes you to spend money super quickly without actually thinking about whether or not this is truly something that is a top priority for you and how you want to spend your money. Impulse spending is so easy to do. So how do we avoid it? Number one is to actually make impulse spending conscious. That means that if you have a budgeting tool that you're using where you're outlining and making a plan with your money, literally have a category called impulse shopping, and then set a goal of $20 or $40 or $50 a month or whatever makes sense for your budget. Let's just plan for you to be able to do that. Now, another idea is using what I've talked about before called the one more day technique. When you see something that you want to get, I want you to just wait one more day. You don't have to not buy it. You don't even have to take it out of your Amazon cart. And if you wait one more day and you think about it and you still really do want to buy that thing and it works within your budget, then great, buy it. But by simply waiting one more day, you guarantee that you give yourself enough time to actually think about if this is something that you truly do want. The last idea here to try and curb that impulse shopping, if this is something that you really do struggle with, is to try and make the process for impulse shopping just a little bit harder. Maybe take away your saved preferences on Amazon so that you can't just choose one-click shopping, but you do have to at least type in the credit card numbers and give yourself that extra few seconds of thinking before and going, do I really want this? All right, the third thing that we want to avoid is unexpected expenses. Now, this sounds great too, right? Like if we could just avoid unexpected expenses, that would be amazing. Unfortunately, life doesn't work quite like that. Cars break down and stuff around the house breaks and kids break their arms or get sick and pets get sick, or you lose a job or COVID happens, or you get invited to a ton of baby showers or wedding showers all in the same month and you have a bunch of gifts you got to buy, and it's a huge drain on your finances. So how can we practically avoid this? Well, we avoid it by recognizing that that's just part of life. And so even though it is unexpected, you don't know when something's going to happen, we have a pretty good idea that this is how life works, and that does happen to people. And so there's a really good chance that it's going to happen to us. And so we should probably start planning for it. This means that if you're using a budgeting tool that has different categories, we create categories for all those types of things. Or if you're not using a budgeting tool, that's totally fine. You can literally just open up a bunch of different savings accounts. I do this at Ally Bank, for example, and they allow me to have different savings buckets and different accounts where I can literally set aside money for different things. In our first couple of years of marriage, we would go months and months and totally be fine. Nothing would happen. Then out of nowhere, we would get hit with like all of these gift expenses. We'd get invited to like 2 different weddings and a baby shower and a birthday all in the same month. And our budget would just get completely blown. And so what we started doing was setting aside $60 a month every month for birthdays and weddings and baby showers and all that kind of stuff. So now when that unexpected things happen, we're not totally blindsided and we have a game plan ready to conquer it. That's what we want to do with all of our unexpected expenses if possible. All right, the fourth thing that we want to avoid is lifestyle creep. Now, this is very common and it happens typically in one of 2 ways. The first is that we have this sort of we deserve it mindset, right? We worked hard, we've been able to level up, get that promotion, progress in our career, and now we make more money and we deserve to be able to spend that money and enjoy that money. But as we'll see in a second, that can cause us some problems. Now, the other one is because of Parkinson's law. So it's not necessarily that you think you deserve to spend more. It's just that Parkinson's law states that basically any specific task will expand to however much resources you have available to do that task. This shows up all the time. Like if you remember back in your college days, how if you were given 2 weeks to write a paper, you would magically take all of that 2 weeks. Whereas if you were given 48 hours to write a paper, you'd figure out how to write it in 48 hours. We basically let ourselves just expand to whatever is allowable. And the same is true with our finances. So as you make more money, all of a sudden your spending, you just kind of let it creep on up right there to that maximum allowable new spending level. And this is a problem with our finances because it can often cause you to feel handcuffed. If we let our lifestyle creep up without consciously thinking about it, we can often find ourselves with all of these payments and all this big expensive life that handcuffs us to our current way of making money, and it gives us no flexibility. So if you ever want to change careers, change jobs, try something new, do something different, and you have this really, really expensive life that you've sort of crept into, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to make that move, or at least it's going to be very difficult because of the handcuffs you've sort of placed around yourself with your big, expensive life. So we want to avoid lifestyle creep so that we can maintain our flexibility and our freedom to pivot and make more decisions. Now, the question is, of course, how do we avoid it? Well, there's a couple things that come to mind. And the first one is just simply being grateful for what you have, your current situation, and recognizing how amazing your life already is right now. There's this great quote from Oprah where she says, "Be thankful for what you have, and you'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough." That quote is so true. And the more we show gratitude and feel blessed for what we have right now in our life, the less we're going to feel like we need to keep spending to have more. The other one here that I want you to focus on is getting super clear on your own personal values and what it is that you want. Not what everybody else wants around you, but what you want, what matters to you, and how that is going to affect your spending money. Hannah and I did a whole video on this, so if you want to check out that video, you can click the link right up here or down in the description below to kind of dive deeper into what I mean when I say get clear on your values and your top priorities and how you want to spend money, because that's very, very different than what everybody else wants around you. And the more clear you are on that, the more you'll know that, hey, I don't need to spend any more money to be happy. I've already hit this level because I'm clear on what it is that I want, and once I achieve those things, I'm good. I don't need to let my lifestyle creep up further than that. The last one here really is about who you spend time with. And so if you're spending the majority of your time around people who are also giving into lifestyle creep, it's going to be really hard for you to not do that as well. What I would encourage you to do is, especially during times like COVID, where, surrounding yourself with people in real life is sort of difficult, not normal. I would encourage you to find podcasts and books and YouTube videos that help give you perspective into other people's life who have a lot less than you. This is one of the reasons that I listen to Hardcore History and Jocko podcasts so much, because it gives me perspectives, especially into sort of what's going on in other countries a lot of the time, or what has happened in history. And it reminds me just how amazing my life is right now and how much I have to be grateful for, and really gives me perspective when I feel like I can't get that other thing that I kind of want. It helps ground me, bring me back to earth, and recognize, man, my life's pretty darn great, and I don't need to let my life creep up in order to be more fulfilled or more happy. All right, the fifth thing that we want to avoid is helping others in a way that is a drain on your own finances. Now, this one is the toughest one, and it's really hard, and I do get it. I totally understand. If you have people in your life, your family or your close friends that really do need financial help and you want to help them, I totally understand that. So this one's tough to say no to, but it's scary what can happen if you don't. In fact, one of the fastest growing demographics for student loan borrowers is people over the age of 60. As of 2019, Americans over the age of 60 had a collective $86 billion in student loan debt, because basically grandparents and older parents are taking out student loans on behalf of their kids and grandkids, which is a really scary thought as to how that plays out over the course of their life if they're never able to pay that back. So here's the problem if you're giving money away to friends and family at the detriment of your own finances, is that if you cause yourself to be held back, there's a really, really good chance that you're going to find your own self in a tough financial situation down the road, and potentially have to go back to those same people that you gave money to and ask them for help now. This is very similar to the whole, that they say on airlines when you're going down and, when the oxygen masks fall, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first. Because if you don't put your oxygen mask on first and you're totally trying to help the person to your left, and if that doesn't go well immediately, then now they're going to need to turn around and help you, because you're going to have your own problem. So you've got to get your own oxygen mask on first before you start trying to help other people, which is tough, I know. So how do we practically do this? Well, in a situation like this, I always want to start with honesty. This doesn't mean that you got to, pull out your own checkbook and show them your bank account login information and give them all the details. But you can say, look, unfortunately, it's not that I don't want to, but I'm not in the best financial situation myself right now. At least I'm not where I need to be in order to help you. And if they have any understanding at all, they should understand that, because they're in a tough financial situation. And if you're in one too, you're sort of sharing in that experience. So start with honesty. Now, the next one is where you have empathy, right? Have empathy for their situation. Recognize, man, they really are in a tough spot and you do feel bad and you want to help them. It's not that they're necessarily bad with their money. Maybe they are, but it's not necessarily always the case, right? A lot of times life just deals people a bad hand and they could just be in a tough spot. So you have empathy for that, which leads me to the last one, which is try to find ways that are non-monetary help. What skill sets do you have that you can bring to the table to help them out that will help them without giving them money? Right? Maybe if you have, pretty decent English skills or grammar skills, maybe you can help them beef up their resume so that they can try to get a better job or a new job or whatever. If you have handyman skills or you're decent at fixing things, rather than them needing to pay for their car to get fixed, which is maybe why they're trying to borrow money from you in the first place, then say, hey, why don't I just come over and take a few hours of your time and try to help them fix the car, watch a few YouTube videos and help them out. At least put your brains together, see what you could do. Show them your empathy and show them that you really do want to help. You just can't do it financially. So think about your own skill sets and how you can apply that to their situation and try to still help them out. So if you like this video about financial habits that you should avoid, be sure to check out this video right here, all about stuff you think improves your life, but really doesn't. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you over there.